So apparently there's more energy at work this week in the background and everywhere. Since everything is just a form of energy of some kind, apparently, of some description or of no description. Of some understanding and beyond understanding. So this energy appears to have some kind of vortex, some kind of center, apparently, that gets increasingly smaller the farther away it gets. And that's just this, doing whatever it's doing. Since everything is apparently energy, and energy without description or without explanation this went to a party last night with neighbors, with other human beings or other human bodies doing partying. And it was seen as energy, as what some call aliveness, the aliveness of living, the aliveness of bodies, the energy of that aliveness taking the form of bodies, partying, laughing, dancing, eating, playing with pets, listening to music. The party was just a collection of different energies doing something apparently called partying. And this, as aliveness also, was there, seeing aliveness, partying as aliveness. And there really wasn't a sense of separation. There wasn't a sense of separate bodies separately partying energetically. Just a collection of aliveness taking different forms, and partaking of something called a party. That's what was seen here. And also what was seen was an apparent separation between the individual bodies. A separation formed out of a sense of feeling separate from everything else, from each other, from life, from aliveness, from everything. Until it's somehow seen that there is no separation. Until that separateness that does the separating is no longer there to separate. And then it's just seen that everything is apparently taking form as energy. All of it is energy, just different forms that are often given different names and attempted to be understood, but they're all beyond comprehension. They're all forms of energy are beyond description. They're just energy doing what it's doing there or that way. Everywhere. Everywhere there is. And everywhere there isn't. Happening for no reason, to no one, as no thing. some of the guests that have attended these meetings have talked about the resonance that they've experienced during the meetings. The resonance with what's being said, what's being seen, what's being talked about. And when they hear that it's likely not them, that it's likely the separate self that's doing all the resonating, that self seems to get discouraged and keeps looking for an answer for it. Because what's being talked about here doesn't have any answers. It's not providing any answers to anyone. It's not guiding or explaining or defining or illuminating anything for anyone. So that separate one may just continue searching endlessly for an answer that it hopes for, and is incapable of ever finding, because it doesn't see that it can never see what's actually there. And of course, it can't accept that it wouldn't be there anyway. And it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be there. And it doesn't have to accept anything. Nothing depends on it. Since there's nothing there in the first place. Since it is just an invention of itself, looking for some form of permanence. When what actually is already there everywhere without it, or instead of it. Or in spite of it. In spite of its determination to be someone. So the seeking continues, the searching continues endlessly. It can't help but continue endlessly until it doesn't. And it has no say in the matter of when it doesn't. Because that would just be more of it trying to do something, trying to disappear, trying to drop away, trying to not be there. Just creates more of it being there. And life does its aliveness anyway, in spite of it, without it, instead of it, infinitely, everywhere, or nowhere. It's simply it. Nothing else is needed, ever. It lacks nothing. It is everything. It doesn't worry. It doesn't get nervous. It's complete in its simplicity. It doesn't seek. It doesn't search. It just is. It just always is. And as a human being, this is it this way. This doesn't have to be anything other than this complete, wholeness. Just a human expression of wholeness energy. Always. No need for psychology. No need for past life therapy. No need for psychiatric medication. Philosophy is just another story, a very interesting story. A lot of interesting stories out there. Evolution is interesting. Different forms of scientific explanations are interesting. It's just another way. Philosophy is another way of understanding the inexplicable. And the understanding doesn't compare with seeing the inexplicable nature, the inexplicableness of all there is. Philosophy is invented by the separate self to explain what it's doing here. And once that self is no longer there, what's seen is there's just no need. There's no emptiness to be explained away. There's no desperation to be calmed. There's no nervousness, anxiety to be soothed. And as long as there are separate people, there will be philosophy, there'll be science. Many of the discoveries of science are beneficial. They may be beneficial health-wise or socially or economically. In a way, it's like two different worlds, two different universes. That's what's been created. There's a separate universe where people are separate. They're separate from each other, so they're separate from everything. And there's another universe or another infinity where everything is one. There's no separation. There cannot be a separation. You know, that separate universe is often referred to as a dream. And it isn't really there. It's just believed to be there. It's created by separate people. And as long as they're separate, it's all they can see. And so it has to be real for them. And then once it's seen that there is no separation, then the science and the philosophy and the medicine and the economics and all the effort that goes into it is just, it's seen for what it is. And it's seen that it's not everything. It's just the separation. The separation that can't be seen until it's gone. And the separation that cannot force itself to be gone, or that cannot choose to be gone. It just happens. When the energy changes. So someone could do this, someone that is a philosopher might actually end up seeing that he or she is no longer separate. And seeing that. And it may be that that one-time philosopher will change their philosophy. This used to do things as Steve that it doesn't do anymore. Some things are still being done, but others are not. There's no longer an interest in doing them. There's no longer a separate one to benefit from them or to be interested in benefiting anyone else that's separate with them. That's just what's seen now. Looks like there's some more individual vortices over here on the right side. Hopefully they'll make it into the video recording. Sometimes the video recordings, they cut out some of the image. So is Leva interested in philosophy?
No, yes and no, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a bit a thinker, but yeah.
Yes, that happens. It can be said that thinker created that Leva. That was certainly the case here. Steve had a thinker. And that thinker was very creative and basically ran away with itself, doing whatever it was doing. Until it didn't do it anymore. Now, there is no thinker. There's no one to be a thinker. There's still some thinking, but there's no separate thinker. Like Steve had an observer observing itself. That seems to be common. An observer observing itself, not realizing that it was all self. It was all self, either doing the observing, doing the thinking, or being observed. It was all the same self. Until it wasn't there anymore. So there are thoughts, the brain makes thoughts still, or if the brain will still read a book and say the words silently as it reads the book. But there's no longer an observer, a separate observer observing itself, keeping tabs on itself and its life. There's just seeing. Everything is just seen. And it's really no big deal. It's just what is. It's just what is. When there's no self. It's as simple as a flower growing, or a tree growing, or the wind blowing, or a bird flying. No big deal. And yet it's infinity, beyond comprehension. Still no big deal. There's no one to have a big deal. And yet, everything is one. There's nothing to cry about. And yet there can be tears. There's everything to laugh about. And yet there can be quiet. Everything is a part of everything. Everything is everything. It's hard to be lonely when everything is everything. It's hard to feel inadequate when everything is already everything. And apparently, the smallest living creatures are part of everything. And our wholeness just like everything. It's just the nature of everything. It's simple in its complexity. It's profound in its simplicity. And it's wonderful. For no one. No one here is feeling wonderful. It's just a wonderful. It's just another word. So how can everything be the way that it is and not be seen by everyone? There's certainly there's no need here or no interest here to go out and create, commit crimes or hurt people or hurt this or rob banks or throw rocks at people, or there's just no, it's just not there. It just doesn't come up. How can oneness abuse itself? If we're all one, if all 8 billion of us people are all one, how is it that oneness could abuse itself? It's just not, it just doesn't come up. They are oneness operating that way, not realizing that they're oneness. So oneness, as everything, has or includes self-abuse, different kinds of self-abuse. Until it's seen that everything is oneness. So when oneness is abusing itself, it's not seeing itself as oneness. It's able to abuse itself until it sees that it's oneness there. And then the last thing that would come up would be robbing a bank. It just wouldn't come up. That is the complexity of oneness. Without going into an explanation, which wouldn't be oneness, so the contradictions, the apparent contradictions within oneness are the result of the ability for oneness to create separation, to create human beings that believe that they're separate. Until they're not separate. So some people have tried to explain that. How can that be? With different stories or different philosophies or different science. But it's there to be seen. And then the bombs stopped dropping. The banks stopped getting robbed. The people stopped getting shot. It just would not come up. It's not even a conundrum. It's just seeing. The difference is seeing and not separating. And there's no need for an explanation of the inconsistency of everything. because that would just be more separation, more bomb dropping, and more bank robbing. The same separation that causes that destruction is talking the explanation. It's all the same separation. The separation that seems so important and so needed until it's not there. And then it's seen that it was never there, never needed, useless. So there are 8 billion potential seers, apparently, on this planet, anyway. Maybe some of them will see, or maybe some of them will see after they're not there. What is doesn't seem to be too concerned about it, although there does seem to be an increased interest in seeing or in falling away. So the talking here continues. And that's okay. Any other questions, Liba? Cause and effect is another explanation, another you explanation in an attempt to explain or understand the world of the self. This takes pills or supplements or eats different kinds of foods or takes homeopathic remedies. It's just something to do. It's just something that happens. It's just another way of seeing, another form of seeing. Seeing that the body is acting a certain way, and seeing that certain foods have certain effects. It's just more seeing. And yet, there really is no one doing it. If life is doing the seeing, if aliveness or oneness or wholeness is doing the seeing, it's all one. So a certain supplement may have a certain feeling or a certain sensation or a certain result for no one. It's something else that is seen when the self's no longer there. When the self is no longer there to be concerned about what will result for me if this happens, or how will that affect me if that happens. If there's no me, it's just happening, 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 happening. For no one. It makes no sense. It makes no sense out of common sense. It makes no sense out of cause and effect. None of it makes sense except to the self that is so sensible. And what it considers as nonsense may actually be everything. What it considers as incomprehensible and scary for it may just be the way of everything. And the one that is having the fear or the nervousness or the anxiety isn't there. It's creating a big hoopla about nothing, because there is no it to start with. So the self is always looking for an explanation so that it will feel that it understands everything. And it has no room for something that can't be explained. And that whole circle of fear, anxiety, and explanation just keeps going round and round. Until it's seen that it's just not necessary. There's no need for it. Just like these patterns keep moving the way they're moving, keep changing color and form and position, and it just keeps going. Everything just keeps going as everything. And every explanation is inadequate. Just doesn't do it. It's just not needed. If wholeness is truly wholeness, it's already filled up. There's no room for any more wholeness. There's no room for any more explanations. Oh, that's just another explanation. It's like when you're full and you're trying to stuff more food down. There's no room. You're already full. So does that sound like more nonsense?